God, thank you for, the freedom that we have in this country to gather together, for the sunshine outside, for the gift of just hanging out together, and we pray you'll bless our time this morning. Cool, so my name is Heidi. For those of you who don't know me, I've kind of been with St. Luke's from the start. A long time now. It's been a really long time. It's kind of that whole sense of, how you just always feel like you've been out of high school like 3 to 5 years, but it's more like, 20-something years. It's kind of like that with St. Luke's. It's like, we've only been going for a little while, but it's actually a decent amount of time. I think we're coming up like 12 or 13 years next year. So it's been quite the journey. So today I'm talking. When I talked, I said to Joseph, what would you, anything to talk on? He said, well, he was going to be talking about what have you picked up from God. That's what he talked about a few weeks ago. Super helpful, super important. He said, maybe you could talk about what do you need to put down? What do you need to let go of? So that's what we're talking about today. What do you need to let go of? And what I find more often than not when it comes to speaking is it's actually a little sermon for this person up here. So my prayer today is that as I talk about a few things that I know that I need to do something with in my life, that maybe some of it will land as an applicable kind of few thoughts for you to think on as well. So we are going to start today with Pokemon. Pokemon. So Pokemon is a big deal in our household. Who at some point in their life, for some of you it was like the OG Pokemon when you were teenagers, and for some of you it's been recycled into your kids' interaction with this delightful concept. So Pokemon is a world where humans and cute, sometimes weirdly shaped creatures called Pokemon live together. So people there become Pokemon trainers, and they collect these critters, and they train Pokemon to battle one another. It's kind of like this endless tournament where if, I guess, like pet lovers and sports fans had an amazing mashup, this is the world of Pokemon. So these trainers, armed with their Pokeballs, which is a thing that you catch Pokemon with, and their determination, they battle gym leaders, they compete in epic tournaments, all in the pursuit of becoming the ultimate Pokemon trainer. The ultimate Pokemon champion. So it's kind of like this adventurous pilgrimage, and there's lots to be learned. They're kind of on this journey together. There's kind of some cool things around friendship and values and loyalty and goodies and baddies. I'm a Pokemon fan. So anyway, we started at the end of 2022 collecting Pokemon cards, which is kind of like the gentle on-ramp, I guess. And before long, it was quite the obsession. Maybe obsessed is an understatement. And then a couple months ago, we introduced the Pokemon Go app. Now, that's another little step up, and it has been a ride. So the Pokemon app is like a little thing on your phone, and it's geocached. So in other words, you kind of are live in the app and you're walking around, and it's like being on a map. And there's different locations that are called Pokestops, which is where you can like spin a wheel thing and you get all these items to put in your bag. So they could be Pokeballs, they could be special potions, they could be items that allow you to like upgrade your Pokemon to fight it better. But anyway, you collect all these things in your item bag. If you didn't know, the church is actually a Pokestop, so you can collect items at church. We have found out. So you go around and you fill up your item bag, and you find Pokemon to catch with your Pokeballs, and you use the things in your item bag to do all sorts of things. Anyway, as you can imagine, like, it's pretty fun, it's a bit addictive, and our kids love it, and so does the other person who's not a child in our house who isn't me. Quite a fan, won't name names, but may be found after dinner after the kids have gone to bed, upgrading, catching Pokemon, and it's quite the time. So anyway, when you first start, you're super enthusiastic, and it's all about going to all the Pokestops and getting all the items that you can. It's like everything that you can, you want to have in your item bag. So as you can imagine, if you're visiting a lot of Pokestops, collecting a lot of things, you have to carry them around in your item bag. And here's the thing, after a while, your item bag gets full. It only has a set capacity. And once it's full, you're kind of stuck for a bit, because you either have to use your items, which I won't go into the details, but it isn't always possible to use them, or you have to discard them. And so we got to a point one evening when one of the kids completely filled up their item bag, and then they just couldn't participate in the game. There was no way for them to do the next thing. And so the clock was ticking on their Pokemon time, and they couldn't do anything, and it ended in like quite a catastrophic little time of tears. And it was funny little situations, which I'm sure you've had this in life, where this random thing happens and it feels a little bit parallel to something a bit more meaningful. Because for me, at that particular time, life was feeling a bit overwhelming and a bit heavy for me. And I kind of had this little parallel where I was like, far out, my item bag is completely full too. I'm feeling a bit stuck, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, and I'm certainly spending a bit of time in tears. My item bag was too full, too heavy, and all that added together rendered me stuck, unable to fully participate in life, and it kind of was a funny little parallel. So changing tack slightly. So not long ago I did... Sorry, I forgot to show you that. That's an item bag. Not long ago, I did an overnight walk to the Pinnacles hut. It's a cool walk. So we did it with a bunch of mums and girls. And so it's amazing how when you actually have to like physically carry everything on your back, you suddenly think through a lot more carefully all the things that go into that pack. Because you do need to cover all your bases. You need to keep yourself healthy, warm, comfortable, safe, fed, clean, ready for a range of situations. And so you kind of curate these packed items in a way that's a lot more measured and thoughtful, and perhaps ruthless than if you're heading out in the car with a boot full of stuff that you could just chuck in everything and it didn't matter. So on the screen is a beautifully collated, pragmatic, just the right weight, just the right things for a comprehensive hiking trip. And, when you're packing your bag, you really notice the impact of a poorly packed, overstuffed, extra heavy pack when it's on your back, when you're the one who has to carry it up hills, across rivers, through forest, and you're the one who has to endure it. So where am I heading with Pokemon item bags and Pinnacles hiking packs? Look, this isn't a bulletproof metaphor, but what I'm wanting to draw on is this whole thought that, we are on this long walk in life. We're on this pilgrimage. We're on this noble quest, this adventure through life. And along the way, we have a pack. And we're carrying a bunch of things with us. And we can start off with a well-balanced, appropriate, healthy pack of good things that will make our journey beautiful, easy, wholesome, sustainable, life-giving. However, if you're anything like me, for a number of reasons, you'll end up filling your backpack with all sorts of additional items. And I guess the thing is, when we're dealing with like the physical reality of a backpack, it's just so much easier to be mindful and measured and disciplined in what goes in that pack, because the consequences are so easily felt. Your shoulders are going to hurt. You've probably made a mistake once of lugging around a whole bunch of stuff you didn't need, and it was painful. Like there was a actual physical consequence of that. Whereas sometimes in life, because things are a little bit invisible and harder to put our fingers on, we can end up picking up and carrying a whole lot of things that can become quite heavy on our inner world. So the whole gamut. We've got, beliefs, different responsibilities, relationship dynamics we carry, goals, habits, attitudes, commitments, pursuits, ideals, different situations that come on board, different aspirations. And in some way, whether they're good or bad or whatever, they all become items that we carry in our item bag or in our pack. So some of the things that we pick up are good. They're good and they're healthy. They serve us well, they bring life, they bring light, they add fun, vitality, they're helpful, they're healthy. They can be, carrying something that's a sense of confidence, or some of the fruit of the Spirit, some spiritual disciplines that we're committed to carrying in our item bag through life. Loving, healthy relationships, good relationships with ourselves, physical health. These are all good and healthy things that we can find in our item bag that we want to have there. Then we can have things that are good and healthy, but maybe have come by their due date. Has anyone ever in their life put their school bag or their handbag away for a couple of weeks in school holidays, forgot about the banana, that you didn't eat on the last day of term. And what happens to that banana? Well, it started off as like a good, healthy, wholesome thing to have in your bag, but over time, being left at the bottom of that bag may have become draining, may have become stale, may have become a little bit rotten. And sometimes we can have these things that start off beautiful, right time, right place, good for the season, and we hold on to them for a bit long, and they can become like that banana at the bottom of our bag, a bit stale. You know, perhaps an example could be you started off in a new job and you're putting all your energy and effort and, you know, just everything into that job because you want to succeed and you want to make a great start, and that is beautiful and healthy and awesome. But then 2 years down the track, you're still exerting an extraordinary amount of effort that's absolutely leaving you broken and depleted. And while there was a time and a season for approaching things that way, it's changed and it's no longer quite that same item that you put in. Some things are good and healthy, but we might just have too much of them, too much of a good thing. So often in this area, it's more around the commitments and responsibilities that we may take on as items in our bag. They can be healthy and life-giving and amazing, but the sheer volume of them means that we become overcommitted, and they can become somewhat heavy, somewhat restrictive. They can mean that while they're beautiful and healthy things, at the end of the day, we have just less to give in other areas because we have so much that we're showing up in this space for. So again, it could be that you're on the PTA, you're the soccer coach, you know, you're on the Sunday roster, you're the chairperson of this, that, and the other, and then you're doing so many amazing, good and healthy things, but there's just the sheer volume becomes a heavy weight. Then we have things that are heavy, but also healthy. So this is a bit of an interesting one, and I've called this heavy and healthy to kind of refer to those things in life that are heavy, but it's healthy that you pick them up. It's healthy that you care. So things like, you know, the tough stuff that we have to deal with in our own lives, like the tough stuff that might be going in our kids' lives or our friends or our families, you know, health issues. We may just have some dire situations around jobs or mental health. Maybe it's taking on, like, just caring for that wider world. There can be some things that are heavy, but as part of being a caring human in the world, it's normal and healthy to feel that weight. You know, it's a good thing to care about the problems in your own life and in others' lives. And it's impossible not to feel the weight of people and situations that you care about. Because it shows you care, it shows they mean something, and it's a part of being human. But it's hard. It's sometimes heavy at times to have these things that you take on the weight of and you do carry in your pack. And then the last one is when things are heavy and unhealthy. You know, sometimes the things that we pick up, or maybe that along the course of life, people have maybe like put in our backpack and we've kind of allowed space for it, can be unhealthy, can be unhelpful. They can be heavy and they can weigh us down. They can be material, maybe it's addictions or health decisions that are heavy and unhealthy. It could be some of the actions that we've taken that have borne consequences that again are heavy and unhealthy, or they can be everything that goes on up here. You know, negative thought patterns, subscribing to unhelpful narratives, carrying the weight of unmet expectations. You know, maybe it's the burden that you place on yourself to achieve some standard or some goal that isn't bad in and of itself, but the weight is heavy and maybe unhealthy. It can often show up as the weight of the gap between where you are and where society says you should be, where your Instagram feed says you should be, the different things that you're measuring yourself to. It could be carrying the weight of words that have been spoken in or around you, that you've taken on to have meaning and to have weight and to be something that is of heaviness to you. There's so much that can fit here. It can be heavy and it can be a lot to carry. So there's these different types of things that we can be carrying around in our metaphorical item bag in life. And I know that you'll see bits and pieces in you in these examples. The thing is, I know a little bit about me, and I know a little bit about a lot of you. And a lot of us are quite, we come from quite strong stock. We're like quite strong people, and we can endure a lot. We can carry things that are heavy for a long time. And for some of us, that's something that we're quite proud of. And I do think there is something to be said for endurance and capacity and all those things. But some of us can be a bit even addicted at times to carrying the burden of it all. Some of us, it's more comfortable to kind of like hoard and keep things close, even though they're heavy, than it is to think about what would it look like to change and let go. Some of us have even trained ourselves to endure this punishment. So it's like we're in that frog in the pot where the temperature's getting warmer and warmer, but we've just learnt to endure more and more. Maybe life has become so consistently heavy for so long that your normality is you're just used to that difficult uphill normality. So what's the effect of having a backpack that does feel a bit full, that does feel too heavy, that's perhaps overflowing with some of these things that we're carrying? What does it mean for our life? Well, often it means we feel tireder than we need to be. We're more overcommitted than we need to be. We feel like life has a sense of stale rather than feeling fresh. On the daily, we're weighed down by the burdens of our personal and relational realities. We're punished by taking on the burden of unsolvable problems. We're trying to earn our way in life. Nothing feels like a gift. We're overwhelmed and stuck. We feel trapped in the muddle and the heaviness of perhaps our own brain or our own life. And it's just not that fun. Ultimately, we're not free to live and pursue and do our part in the world in the fullness that's possible because of the weight that we're carrying. The thing is, we're humans living in this context, and carrying things in our item bag is just a reality of life. It's part of our embodied human experience to be picking up these things and having these life experiences. But how are we supposed to live in light of this? We're going to look at Galatians 5 verse 1. So Galatians 5 verse 1 says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourself be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. And it's interesting because sometimes I think we know that there is this freedom in Christ, but we still allow ourselves to be walking and living and experiencing this sense of non-freedom, the sense of being under this yoke, to being trapped in these chains, to having this weight that we're just hobbling and stumbling along with. So in this verse, the Apostle Paul is writing to the Galatians to remind them of all the incredible things they have in Christ. And in this situation, some folks were trying to bring back all the rigid rules and regulations from the old Jewish law. So all the things of the old Jewish law, they were trying to bring them back and essentially throw off or discredit or not pay attention to the fact that Christ had set them free for freedom. Christ hadn't set them free to be enslaved, to be burdened, to be held down, to be chained up. So it was becoming a real burden for believers, and Paul's like, hey guys, hold up, Christ has set us free for a reason. It's for freedom that Christ has set us free. So don't just go putting those chains back on yourself. In our context, we don't have the old Jewish law that's being burdened on us, but there are a bunch of things that we take on board and we allow to shape and be a more important voice and to frame up and, override that freedom that Christ has come to bring. So it could be societal expectations, our own impossible standards, our drive and ambition. It might be the weighty issues that just are on our plate. The list goes on. And life can be overwhelming at times, and all these things can pile up and make us feel like we're carrying the world on our shoulders. But the thing is, Paul reminds us, in the midst of that craziness, we have this incredible freedom in Christ. We don't have to wear those chains. We don't have to carry those burdens in the same way that we used to. We don't have to do those things on our own. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. For freedom that Christ has set us free. So what does this look like? And what do we do to get there? How does it all work? Well, if we're going to see life as a pilgrimage, as a journey, as a long walk or a hike, or whatever choice you prefer, the Pokemon or the pinnacles, and if we're going to use the metaphor as a backpack to kind of symbolise what we carry, what we pick up and make a part of our journey, and whether that is a life-giving or a burdening experience, and if we believe that it is for freedom, that Christ has set us free, and we want to live in that sense of freedom and that reality of freedom, what could we do today to make sure that we're carrying the right things in the best possible way so that we can be our best selves on mission in our families, in our relationships, in our communities, in the world, so that we can live in the freedom that Christ has set us free for? Now, I know, me included, that a lot of us have been somewhat burnt by, 4 steps to X, Y, Z in the past. But I'm a process girl, and it's what I do all day long for work. Process creates freedom. Structure will set you free. That's what I tell my clients. But we are going to have a little 4-stepper. So what I'd love to do is, while I talk through a few things, just sit and let your mind be curious as to where this might be perhaps evident in your life. I've kind of taken the approach of I'm going to talk through this from the lens of my own experience, and that's all I have to draw on with certainty, and just trust that the Spirit of God is at work in here, and you're a self-aware, adult as well. And so as I talk through this, I just encourage you to take a curious approach about what may or may not be something for you to weigh in on and just take a closer look at. So the 4 steps that I'd love for us to all consider as we kind of think through what is in our item bag and what are we going to do to kind of move forward to maybe a healthier, lighter, freer place. The first one is take an audit, an honest and thorough review. Then we're going to hold a truth of Scripture to that item in our bag. 3, take a practical step to reduce that load. We're going to talk about putting things down, taking things out. And then number 4, talk to someone about it. Share your decision. I think it's well and good to pray and think about stuff. But I think talking with someone, kind of bringing it to a bit more of a known reality, sharing your decision, makes a massive difference. Now, because I'm overkill, I've made you an amateur cheat sheet, right, to work through your item bag audit. So we're going to do that together now. And like I said, sit back and just have a think. So I don't want this whole exercise, though, to become like another burden in your backpack where you're like, gotta do an audit, gotta do an exercise, got my homework to do, got to clean out my bag, and now it's just another thing on my list. But the whole goal today is I just want you to, at the end of it, to maybe have identified one thing that we can put down. Pick and choose what's helpful. Just take a relaxed approach. Cool. So this is speaking from someone who herself has had a little clean out lately. I've still got a lot of work to do on kind of realigning, rebalancing, repacking that item bag. But for some, you'll find even small relief in identifying just a few pesky things in your item bag that you could sort straight away. For some of you, you'll find a few things that you're like, cool, that's just a permission slip for me. I wasn't sure whether I was allowed to do that or I should do that. A permission slip for things you've already been considering. And for other areas, it's going to illuminate maybe some bigger things that just take a bit of time. It's not a one and done thing today. Cool, so the first thing is audit your item bag. We'd tip out the item bag on the floor, right? When you kind of get home from a trip and you unpack it all and you pull all the things out of all the weird little pockets that are in your bag, that's what we're going to do. Shake it out, unzip it, and pack each little corner pocket. What have we got? Is that up there? Oh, it's at the back, but it's not up there. It's okay, we're coming. So we're just going to walk through those little categories and work out what have we got in our item bags. So, things that are good and healthy. What have you got in your bag that you're carrying in life that serves you well, brings you life and light, adds fun, freedom, vitality, that is aligned with who you are and where you want to be? Good habits, perhaps, maybe aspects of the fruit and the spirit, spiritual disciplines. When we are reviewing what's good and healthy in our item bag, one verse that's amazing to hold close is Galatians 5 verse 16, the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. Are those things in our item bags? Are they flourishing? It won't be a complete item bag full of everything amazing, but there'll be a few things in there. So take a moment. What have I got that's good and healthy in my item bag? Thank yourself for packing them. Well done. Great move. Recommit to feeding, protecting, and nurturing these items. And take those items, put them back in your pack. Now, what are some of the things that are good and healthy, but perhaps they've expired? They've come to the end of their useful life. This is where we bring in the sniff test. The sniff test. How much do you use that in life more than you ever thought you would as an adult, the sniff test? What did you pick up a while back that served you well for that season, and now it just feels a bit stale or old? Maybe it's gone a bit rotten. Where's that banana that got stuck at the bottom of your pack that you didn't notice you'd held on to, but it's actually been something you've been carrying around, and maybe you've held on to it for a bit too long? Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 talks about there being a season for everything, and I think there's kind of like a really gracious, gentle approach to these things that were good and healthy that are expired. There was a good reason you picked that up, and it served you well. But is it time, perhaps, to either trim it, repair it, reshape it, or maybe just put it down again? Thank you for, your service in my item bag, but it's time to move on. Sometimes they can be small things. I used to listen to a bunch of podcasts that were perfect for that time and space in my life. And I got to a point, though, where I'd grown and developed and changed as a person, and continuing to listen to those particular podcasts, it just was not a right fit anymore. So it could be as small as saying goodbye to a habit or a thing you've been engaging with or a publication or what have you. It could be as big as sometimes friendships evolve. You start off, it starts in a really good, healthy, life-giving, two-way place, and then maybe you've developed, maybe they've moved on in places, and it's just not as life-giving as it used to be. In fact, it might even be veering on to becoming a little bit toxic. That requires a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of discretion, but it's okay to say, that was good and healthy, but I'm going to just step aside from that now because it's no longer something that contributes in a good and healthy way. Thank them for their service and gently put these items aside. Do not put them back in your item bag. Are things that are good and healthy, but there might be too much, too many things. In Matthew 5, verse 37, Jesus says that all you need to say is simply yes or no. Let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. And that's a really awesome verse to hold up in light of these things that you may have that are good and healthy, but there may be too much of them. Too many yeses inevitably leads to a no in a different area. So sometimes with the intention of, being of faithful service, making things happen, supporting good things, we can say yes to a lot of great things, but we can only say yes to so many things before we are realistically carrying too much. And our yes becomes less impactful because we have less of ourselves to give, and it can become spread across too many things. We can end up unknowingly through overspent capacity and time and headspace, and that we actually end up by default saying no to some of the more important things. So whether that be our own personal wellness or our headspace of being present with our loved ones, whatever, I guess it's just a little reality check of all the good things that I'm doing, that I'm contributing, that I'm responsible for, that I'm committed to. Are they in check? Or are there a few things that I need to rejig or let go of? What are you carrying in your item bag that may be a good and healthy commitment, but maybe there's just a few too many of them? Too many yeses, not enough nos. Which of them, though, noble is squeezing the margins in your life and just leaving the dregs for some of those other important areas? Though difficult, is there anything that you need to put down, even for a season? Maybe not a permanent no, but for a season, to make walking your journey doable, to make that pack carryable again. For me at times it's meant saying no or delaying work opportunities that I really wanted to do. I really wanted to do them, but it would have just upset the pack, right? It just was not the right time to be able to say yes to another thing, though good. Speaking opportunities, changing up my availability to certain commitments and causes. Remember, you can always experiment on this. If there's things that you're not sure if you do need to put them go, maybe test putting them down. But if you've got an item bag that's overstuffed with commitments where you're jamming things in the side there and trying to make them fit, and they're all healthy and good, but they just are too heavy as a whole, that's a little reality check. So lay them out, think them through, make even a small change of what goes back into the backpack. Then the things that are heavy and healthy. Now these ones are hard because it's natural and good and healthy to feel the weight of things that matter to you in the world and in the world of others. And I kind of feel like in this example, I don't need to tell you what these things might be, because straight away you know what these things are in your life. It's all the stuff that if you could magically fix, either in your own life or in someone else's life, you would, but there isn't the magic fix. It's the things that if you could flick a switch and not care about, then you would, but you can't. It's the stuff that we're practically caring for ourselves, for people, the things that we're emotionally and mentally carrying for others, those tough situations. There's things that have a long burn without a guaranteed outcome. Here's the thing. You can't not have this in your item bag because it matters, it's important, it's a thing. But you also can't carry it alone. It's too heavy. And so the verse that I think is a beautiful verse to hold up in light of this bunch of things in your item bag is Matthew 11, verse 30, where Jesus says, "My yoke is easy, my burden is light. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." And we can cast these cares to Christ. We can trust these items to God. And in many ways, it's kind of the only option that we have. Either carry the weight completely or entrust these items to God. We can take on his yoke. We can share that burden. We can rest in his strength, that despite the heaviness of these items, we can share that burden and move closer to living lightly and freely. Yeah, you've got to carry it, but you don't have to carry it all. You can co-carry with Christ, and you can co-carry with humans, with friends, with support, with all these amazing people that we can call on in life. When we were doing the Pinnacles, Rachel had a bung knee. And so naturally, we were happy to carry some of her items in her item bag to make it doable so that she could participate, right? So we can share with others. But what do you need to re-entrust to the hands of God that you just know it's beyond being able to fix it all yourself? Where do you need to hand over that burden to be lightened by the strength of God in your world? Where do you need to pull in some more people? Pull in the people to help lighten that load so that you can not have to carry all of that heavy weight. Even though sometimes these acts of entrusting to God and sharing with people changes like zilch materially, it doesn't actually often result in the actual problem being sorted. It also changes everything about how heavy those things are in your item bag, how weighty those things are that you're carrying. And then with the heavy and the unhealthy, which also, I might add, is quite normal. So if you're like, I got a few of those things. I got a lot of those things, don't worry. It's normal. Those ones are a bit more of a slow burn. So the items we find here are not often intentional pickups. We've often accumulated them from all sorts of places and people in life. What might you have in your pack here? I've found along the way, there's a few things I've managed to pick up. Sometimes it can be the burden of my own negative thought patterns, just the brain and what's going on in here. Sometimes it's the heaviness of the subscription to untrue or unhelpful narratives that feel like they are true and they are, what is real in our lives. Sometimes it can be the weight of unmade decisions. Oh, that's one that I can identify with. Sometimes it can be the unmet expectation of our own personal achievements. We should be further by now. We should be here by now. I don't have this by now. It can be the burden of working or living in a context that may have a lot of amazing attributes, but also has so much that sucks your mental energy and brings anxiety into your life. So for me, looking at these kind of items in my item bag is kind of in some ways the hardest, because as much as I'd like to discard them, it's not always that easy. They need working through a bit more. These heavy but unhealthy items are often a part of our life work of becoming, growing whole and wholesome. And again, reflecting on Matthew 11, verse 30, again, Jesus starts that passage with, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest for your souls." And these heavy but unhealthy things, they wear us down and they give the opposite of rest to our souls. They tire out our souls. They grind us down. They're in our item bag and they're just difficult. And that's the tiring bit. And often, when it comes to, those verses, "Come unto me, rest for your souls," it's like, oh, that's all good. But I can sometimes find myself treating it like when a friend's coming over, it's like, I need to tidy the house and get things sorted before they come over. And sometimes I think, I'll invite God in, but I just want to sort a few things out myself first. But we need to invite God into the mess, into the lay of the land. The thing is what it is. Come to him, though you're messy and weary and burdened, though you're not looking your best and disheveled, though you've carried this thing around for a long time and tried real hard to sort it out, and it's really not sorted out. Come unto God despite all those things. There's a reprieve and a respite and a de-weighting that comes when we come to Christ despite all these heavy and unhelpful things that we're carrying, like Rosie said in worship, when we come as we are rather than the facades and the kind of well-wishing of who we want to think we are. This isn't enough to be always... I think it's amazing to come and rest and come to God when we're weary, but often alongside these things, there's a little bit of effort required on our own part as well. There's often these things that require a little bit of proactive growth in our own lives. And so what I've put up here is I've put, invite God into the mess. Grow in your emotional and psychological awareness. This has been a massive thing for me, because what I've found is everything that goes out in here completely changes our whole experience of life. So a situation or a circumstance or a thing may remain completely the same, but if we can grow more emotionally and psychologically aware and grow in our toolbox and our skill set on how we kind of deal with life, it can be an absolute game changer. So, when it comes to the heavy and unhealthy, it's inviting God into that mess, but it's also gaining growth skills, right? So it could be talking with someone who you trust, who will tell the truth on your life in this situation. It can be reading books or listening to podcasts. It can be seeing a specialist, whether that be a life coach, or a counsellor, psychologist, someone who will help give you the tools and the perspective to actually progress forward with some of those things that are ongoing and heavy. It could be adding in practices of journaling, mindfulness, affirmation. I know these have all made a massive difference in tackling some of these heavy and unhealthy things which I've carried in my backpack for quite some time. It could mean taking on the bravery to actually bring a real life situation to an end. I've had an example where the context of where I was doing some of my work, while some of it was amazing, was an absolute mental, emotional tax on my life, and it caused a lot of anxiety. And so I had to actually physically separate myself from that, and that was difficult. But it brought a freedom and a life and a vitality that was absolutely worth it. It might be as simple as booking some time with a trusted friend to say out loud some of the burdens you've been carrying, and they can be Christ in the flesh to help you. So these items in this category that you have in your item bag, sometimes it's not as simple as saying see you later. You know, sometimes we put them back in our backpack because we know that they're a reality of what we're still dealing with, but we do that with an awareness. I remember a while back kind of saying to Simon about an area of my life, I was like, I just am so scared that it's going to be uphill and heavy and hard forever. So those things where they might be heavy and unhealthy, put them back in, but commit to knowing and exploring and growing where they might be able to be turned from unhealthy, unhappy, and hard forever into a whole different experience, because I promise you it can happen. So anyway, that's a lot I know. So what we're going to do in a minute is we're just going to play a little bit of music, and I'm going to walk you through a little, not even a mindfulness thing, just a little thing. Kind of a little bit similar to what Julia Bloor did a couple of weeks back, which I personally found was the right thing for the right time for me. So what I want us to think of, and I know that some of you are like, cool, I've just sorted out my item bag, I've got a trailer load I'm going to take to the dump, done skis. I want you to try and avoid the temptation to sort everything out right now, because I don't think it's probably that feasible nor healthy. Just to kind of on the fly just dump a whole lot of stuff. What I want you to do is think of one thing that you're carrying and you want to put down, and Ben, you can play us a little bit of background something. Shut your eyes if you feel comfortable. Now, you don't have to participate. If you want to just shut your eyes and think about what's for lunch, that's fine too. But if you do want to participate, I'd love for you to sit with your palms shut in a fist. So 2 palms on your hand shut. Looking at your item bag, thinking about your pack, thinking about your life and all the things that you've been carrying. Seeing those things laid out and seeing some of those things that you want to put down. I want you to choose one thing that you're carrying and you want to put down. It could be the smallest thing that's expired and you just know it's of no use to you when you need to leave behind. It could be something that is good and healthy, but it tips you over the edge. There's just too much, and you know you need to put that down. It could be a massive sorrow or a heartache or a situation that is beyond the realms of you to fix, but it weighs on you, and you know that you can't carry it in the same way you have been. It could be an ongoing thing that you've carried for ages. It's heavy and it's unhealthy, but it's a tricky little box that's hard to deal with. But you're done. You want to see a different future that doesn't have that burdening you down, weighing you down on your journey. So I want you to think of that one thing, and I want you to open one hand as a symbol of entrusting it to God, as a symbol of committing to moving it out of your item bag, as a symbol of acknowledging that it has been weighing you down and it is a burden that you no longer want to carry in the same way. And then with your other fist that is still closed, while it's still closed, I want you to think, it could be one that I've mentioned, it could be another one. What is a verse or a scripture or a phrase that you can hold against that item, that you can hold to it to expose the truth of what you want to see in lieu of that item that you're carrying? I want you to think of a verse that you will hold when you think of that item. And then I want you to think of a real life person and a real life step. Maybe the person is your step that you will take. What's one thing you're going to do or talk to that is going to actually mean that that item moves closer to being something you put down? Could be the tiniest thing. Could be a text you send after the service. Could be, a book you buy. Could be whatever. And then when you feel like you've got just a step, could be the the most kind of basic thing you've ever done in your life, but it feels like a big thing to you, then open your hand as a commitment. And while your hand's open, let me just pray. Lord, it's a funny old ride being a human, and it's just so good to take a moment to work out what we have picked up along the way. Things that are good, things that used to be good, things that there's too much of, things that are just heavy and hard, and things that, we really want to find health and wholeness in. And God, we just we take it seriously that you have, for freedom that Christ has set us free, and we don't want to live in a way that is bound and weighted and overly burdened. We want to live free. We want to live as we were intended to. We want to be you in the world, salt, light. We want to have impact. We want to have significance. We want to be all that we can be. And so, Lord, as we bravely for some and in small baby steps for others find those things in our bag that we no longer want to carry, Spirit, I pray that you'll help us hold those scriptures close, that you'll help us take those next steps, that you'll help us find those people to have those conversations with, that we can move forward a little freer today, a little lighter, a little less burdened than we were yesterday. We pray that in your name. Amen. Amen.